You can start fresh there. Do it quickly. You got long arms, bro. Okay, just remember the time.
More life.
Shalom, everyone. Welcome back to Practical Spirituality. Rabbi Yom Tov Glazer here in the old city of Jerusalem, overlooking the Temple Mount. And remember to subscribe and hit that little jingle bell to remind yourself or be reminded that or told that I'm giving a class. Today, we're going to be discussing health and specifically the spirit behind health, because there is two choices really, and one is you're going to either have a soul voice or a body voice. You have them both, and we'll even speak about how to put them together. But first of all, just understand that if you're not in good health, you're probably not going to hear your soul voice. And think about it, if you stub your toe, which puts you in an acute state of not in good health. You're not in good health. When your big toes like, wah, 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 and you're just like, oh. That, are you your soul? Do you hear the soul voice? Or do you hear the body voice when you're in that situation? And the answer is you just hear the body voice because your toes throbbing. Well, what that means is that who you are has now somehow been like boxed into your toe. Well, if your back's out because you don't have good spinal health, which usually comes from a lack of muscles lining your spine, because if you think about it, your entire spine has like this giant cage of muscle to protect it. But people who don't do any exercise for those spinal muscles have instead the actual spine bearing the weight. And if your spine's bearing weight, well, you're going to be compromising it, and you're going to wind up with backaches. And then there's the muscles themselves often aching, like actual muscles of the back aching can happen from emotional stuff, which is, this is the, I know everyone loves to mention the name Sarno, but it's not Sarno, it's called somatic healing. And so what can happen is that there's certain muscles in your back. I remember years ago, I used to have terrible back pain, but like debilitating back pain to the point of having to be bedridden. When would the back pain hit? It would hit anytime people didn't know who I was. If people didn't know who I was, that sounds weird. If people didn't know who I am, it would take, within an hour, the muscles in my low back would I don't know if it's the word spasm or what, but they would become like knives in my back, in my low back. And so bad that I could barely move, and I could just enough to lie down, and it would stay that way for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, meaning that only Percocet could save me, to like just be able to go to the bathroom. Percocet was in order to get to walk to go to the bathroom, and so I had to do some very deep work on myself to get my back to relax. And I understand that that's ridiculous. Obviously, not everyone has to know you, especially strangers. Strangers shouldn't have to know you. But my need to be recognized was so massive when I was young that just had to be. And so, you know what I learned? I learned that anytime I had to go somewhere, so I'm showing up at a hotel or something, I realized that my first job is because I want to enjoy the vacation, my first job was to walk around all the strangers who are also staying there and to just say, oh, what do you do? And they would say what they do, and they would say, what do you do? And I'd say what I do. And I'm like, okay, next. And I go to the next one, oh, what do you do? And he'd say, well, I work in banking. What do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a rabbi. And oh, next. And I would just literally comb through the entire place of people who are staying there and make sure everyone knew who I was. So, which was great too, because I got to know who they were. And my back, totally relaxed. Totally relaxed. Now, obviously, that was a Band-Aid for a much deeper issue. So I had to do some very deep work on myself to get to the point where I don't really care anymore if anyone has any idea who I am. It was very important to me for a lot of years, even as a rabbi, even as a hippie. But I needed to be recognized for who I was, that I am someone. And which meant that was really being driven by no one, to go a little deeper. That was really being driven by you're a nobody. And that nobody inside of me was so deeply hidden inside, so painfully hidden inside. I'm still not even sure where it's from, but my guess is that growing up in West Los Angeles, like Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Brentwood, growing up in that world, there was only one way to be somebody, and that was money. Like, you had to make it. You had to make it financially in some big way or another. And I'll never forget, like, the year I really made my biggest kind of, the year I really kind of came onto at least the Jewish scene of public figures. It was like a very big year, and I was on radio shows, and I was on some TV spots, and it was like a big deal year. And I was sitting with my grandmother, and she says, so what have you been doing? And I tell her how, like, what a breakthrough year it was and all these amazing things that happened. And she looks at me and she says, when are you going to be somebody? This is my Beverly Hills grandma. And I'm like, what do you mean, Grandma? And she says, when are you going to be somebody? And I'm like, what does it mean to be somebody? No, I was just asking him if he could be between the two of you. That'd be great. So I'm like, what does it mean to be somebody? And she says, money. Money. When are you going to make some money? And again, it was like my father sometimes will forget himself, and he'll just look at me and shake his head and be like, very disappointing. Very disappointing. And I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, I say to him, what's so disappointing, Dad? And then he says, I always thought that you'd be somebody. I always thought you'd be somebody. And I said, what's it mean to be somebody? And he's like, money. And that same grandmother, when she was 91 years old, she went into a coma. And she was in that coma for 7 months. And the family would go see her. And at around the 4th month, she opened her eyes for just in the middle of a coma. And it turned out the whole family was in the room. She opened her eyes and she said her last 2 words, her parting words. And you know what her last 2 words were? Her last 2 words were, sell Disney. Meaning sell the stock. That was her, and this is a woman. Her husband was more so. Her husband died, my grandfather died of I think 8 heart attacks, something like that. Meaning Meaning he had enough money, he could just count it the rest of his life, with his feet kicked up by the pool in Palm Springs. Because he was in a high stress, the apparel, he was in men's clothing. And he just could have counted his money for the rest of his life and chilled. But he was so driven in that American dream, which I call the American nightmare. As you see, just growing up in America, you can see these beautiful people that come from all over the world, Mexico, Guatemala, China, Japan, and they have these beautiful families and great traditions. And, just like Jewish people, Mexicans actually sing together. They sit together and sing together like we do. We I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Jewish people get together and just sit around the table and sing. Sometimes long periods of time with everyone just singing out their full voice, like no embarrassment. And especially on holidays and the Sabbath, we're singing away. Anyway, but when I see these families, these beautiful Mexican families that move to America, I think National Geographic should come and stop them and send them home. Go back to where you're from. You realize this place will tear your soul out. They'll tear your soul out. You'll lose your song. You're going to lose your music. And that's what happened to my family. Our family was very simple in Europe, so simple. On my mother's side, it was scholars from Lithuania. I'm directly descendant of one of those great scholars named the Tosfos Yom Tov. And my father's side were these very, very simple fiddler on the roof Eastern Europe people. Like my great grandmother, her name was Baba Sprinza. And Baba Sprinza, she would go around it. She had a cow, and she would milk the cow and then go around at around 3, 4 in the morning to all the doors of the 4 families who lived in this mud floor neighborhood. They were the only Jewish family. There was a Jewish family called Glaser, and then they were living there for hundreds of years. And then there were 3 Gentile families, and she would go around to each family and leave milk for free. She would just put milk so that when everyone woke up, they would have fresh milk in front of their houses, and that's how our family lived. Glazers were simple people, and very holy people. And my brother Sam traveled to Romania, with his backpack and like a teenager to go see Europe and Eastern Europe, Western Europe. But when he went to Romania, he walked into this mud town. It was still mud, still not even cobblestone. He walks into this dirt-floored little village that he was given a map how to find it, like on a napkin. And he gets in there, and this man in his 80s, this is in the Carpathian Mountains, so they're kind of tall, lanky types. This old man in his 80s, maybe his 90s, looks at my brother and he says, Glaser. Looking at my brother, and he turned white because all the Glasers were killed. And how is this Glaser walking in with a backpack? He thought he was he was probably crossing himself, thought he, was seeing Jesus or something. He couldn't believe that there was a Glaser alive. Anyway, but the American dream, especially for the Jewish people, is the American nightmare. And it really, we learn from the Torah over and over again, especially when Moses is speaking in the 5th book, over and over again, including last Shabbos, Parshas Eikev, that Jews are really good at poverty, but we don't do well with wealth. Jews have a hard time surviving wealth. Wealth is And you get ego, the ego comes with wealth, you just, why buy a lame car if you can afford a nice one? But people just treat you differently when you drive up in a nice car. And why eat falafel when you can eat steak? But people treat you differently when you walk into a steakhouse. And you can't avoid it. You're just going to have ego when it comes to money. But the problem with ego is that the second you have the ego, then the soul gets eclipsed. The ego is the eclipsed, the eclipse of the soul. And when your soul gets eclipsed, so you're no longer in the world. You're no longer here. You're dead. And it's just such a different perspective to see you in a nice car belonging to a fancy gym with your own personal trainer, and you're drinking the finest juices and the best supplements, and you're dead, but really dead. And, when I got to Israel, growing up in West LA, with 9 surfboards and my mountain bikes and my Toyota 4Runner, and the funny thing, I'm in perfect shape now, but when I got there, when I got here, I had 20 pounds of muscle on me. I mean, I weigh 152 today. I weighed 173 with not an ounce of body fat on my body. And this was the result of a sport that people don't understand much about, but it's called surfing. And people don't realize that in surfing, 98% of your 3 hours in the ocean, which I would do 2 of those a day, 98% of it was paddling as hard as you can. You're just like, go into a swimming pool and paddle as hard as you can. Do the breaststroke. That's what we're doing. We're doing a breaststroke. Do it as hard as you can for 6 hours a day. I surfed for 6 to 8 hours a day. And if it was a full moon, I would do another 2 hours around midnight, just out there in the ocean. Like, you can't even see the waves. It's pitch black. But the full moon would light up the feathering spray of offshore wind. It would light that up, and it would light up the white water that's cascading behind you. And interestingly, this is a very strange thing, but I think it could teach us a lesson, since I'm talking about surfing at night, is that the most difficult maneuvers that required lots and lots of failed tries, I would practice those at night and get it wired at night. Meaning I would do it over and over again until I just got it until I had it. And then the next morning I'd go out surfing and it was mine. There was something about removing I think it was removing the mental real estate that vision consumes. Because vision is, speed of light. It's taking up a lot of your nervous system. I mean, a lot of your brain is busy with visual. And there was something about losing vision, but feeling the contour of the wave only, and my own muscle memory, that I was able to perfect maneuvers that are extremely difficult in the pitch black. I mean, it's pitch black out, basically. You can't see the wave you're riding. And that was when I was able to do that. It's interesting that we do close our eyes when we go spiritual. You'll notice that the state of, when people go into meditation internationally, it's with our eyes closed. And Judaism, which probably meditates more than most people in the world. I mean, we make Buddhists look like Wall Street, from the amount we meditate. We have to do, for example, one of the things, we have to do 100 meditations a day. 100 a day, and with eyes closed, carefully and slowly, I already made a blessing on my water, but it's, I just, oh, you are the source of all sustenance. Ata, you, yes, you. And meaning calling God you is called chutzpah, because if in Spanish you don't call the person you honor, you don't call him you call him usted. Even in English, you call the judge your honor, you don't call him you. But when you recognize God as the source of all sustenance, meaning when you humble your ego, the soul goes up, and suddenly the word you is, you're like contemporary with God. You're, like when two judges are playing tennis together after work, they don't call each other your honor. They're contemporaries. They call each other you. Anyway, but we do this. We have to do 100 of those a day. And then we do deep, longer ones 3 times a day. And in fact, the leader of today's prayer is about 100 people in shul. And the leader of today's meditation, I believed he didn't let us go long enough. And so when he was on his way out, I said to him, give it a little more time. Give it a little more time. And he said, but I already had 10 men, because he's not allowed to start till 10 people are through with their meditation. He said, but I already had 10 men. And I said, yeah, but there's 100 of us in shul. So just give us more time. He says, okay, no problem. And but we all close our eyes when we do that. We all close our eyes when we're in that state. And you'll notice also something amazing about sight is that you can see something that's amazing, that blows you away. Like, for example, lightning. Lightning's amazing. When you see a nice big thunderbolt, it's amazing. But if the lightning storm keeps going for a few hours, I promise you it's not that exciting towards the end. And one time my wife and I went to the Swiss Alps, and we on our way from Zurich to Saint Moritz, we kept pulling over because I couldn't drive. I was losing my motor skills, because it just so happens that in a state of awe, you can lose motor skills. That's why, for example, in psychedelics, there's sometimes people need help getting to the bathroom. You just gotta help the poor guy get to the bathroom. The funny thing is, he can't walk, but boy, can he dance. And but it's the same thing, because that there's a state of awe that we get into, which has nothing to do with psychedelics. It's just that in that state of awe, the default mode network goes offline. And when the default mode network's offline, well, your default mode network's job is to turn everything into a concept. Its job is to create everything into concepts. Why? Because you don't want to experience hot pots firsthand. You should have a concept of burning yourself on a hot pot. And so the default mode network tells you, tap it first, tap the pot before you grab it, so you don't burn yourself. And so it's the default mode network's job is to keep everything conceptual. But when you're in a state of awe, when something just shocks you into that moment of wow, so what happens, the default mode network now goes offline automatically in a state of awe. And you're no longer in really that safe, you're not able to protect yourself right there. You kind of lose your ability to protect yourself. I recently had in the Possible Use seminar, our whole job in there is to turn off the default mode network. We take a very specific angle in turning off the default mode network. And what is that? We do a frontal attack on the actual content that your default mode network is designed to protect you from. I'm going to say that again. We do a frontal attack on the actual, what did I say, subjects? Content, thank you. The possible you is a frontal attack on the content that your default mode network's built to protect you from. So if it's a hot pot, so the default mode network's built to remember every hot pot you ever touched before so that you don't burn yourself. But the thing is you have other content. For example, every time you've ever been rejected, every time you've ever been embarrassed, every time you've ever every time you've ever failed, which is like more times than you can count growing up, how many times we failed at what we were doing. Every time you've ever been controlled, meaning a loss of free will. Every time you've ever been controlled by people. Have you ever noticed, you guys ever noticed that you do not like being told what to do? That was another big horse pill to swallow, is becoming an observant Jew means being told what to do. So other religions are a little easier on that level, but in Judaism it's like literally what shoe you put on first. What sleeve you put on first, which pant leg you put on first. I envy women, they don't have to think about it. Unless they wear pants. But what happens is the default mode network turns everything into concepts. And in the Possible You seminar, we do this frontal attack on it. And what happens is the default mode network goes down, you go into a state of awe, and I ask everybody the fourth day when they come back in, I say, please raise your hand if the world looked a little different. And the whole room raises their hands. And then I say to him, tell me what looked different. So one guy says, I don't know what it was. I was like eating this apple, and all of a sudden I tasted an apple for the first time in my life. And then I realized I've been eating the concept of apples. Another guy raises his hand. He says, I'm telling you, Rabbi, I'm married 25 years. I have never seen that woman in my life. And I sat there and cried with her for hours. And I asked her to marry me. She's like, I think we're married. And I'm like, no. Now we're married. Our marriage starts today. Because because one of the tricks, there's several tricks. We mentioned the Swiss Alps, Put yourself in a situation that's awe-inspiring. Lightning storms. We mentioned psychedelics. There's also breath work can put you there. There's exhausting yourself in exercise can put you there. In fact, one of my dear students, a guy named David Duchovny, he wrote The Love Boat, The Partridge Family, a famous Hollywood TV screenwriter and TV show writer. And you know how he wrote all the stuff we saw? I grew up on those shows. You know how he wrote all that stuff? He jogs to utter exhaustion, meaning falling down. And he actually has it planned out that there will be grass to fall on because he's going to fall. He didn't always hit the grass. But he jogs to utter exhaustion. When he gets to utter exhaustion, he, falls down, panting, and then reaches for he had a little notepad and a little pen. And then he would roll over and write out episode after episode after episode of these, television shows. And that's how he did it, even into his old age. He was still doing it. Last time I spoke to him, he has a beautiful house in Las Vegas as well, which last time we were in touch, he was there. And did I say Las Vegas? Sorry, Palm Springs, right where that gondola ride is up to the top of those mountains up there, where it snows, right outside Palm Springs. Anyway, I'm thinking of hitting Palm Springs this Hanukkah. The only hard part about that is leaving Israel for a Jewish holiday. I basically would never do that, but my parents have become too old to fly. And so we're thinking of flying the whole, gang to America, But at this rate, who knows if America will still be there? Who knows if the American dream will, if they will not have woken from the dream, by Hanukkah. Anyway, so I kept getting out of my car because I was losing my motor skills. And the reason I brought up the seminar was because there was a butcher in the seminar, an older guy who was a butcher. And he came in on the fourth day. When I asked him to raise his head, he raised his head. It's covered in his hand's covered in Band-Aids and bandages, both hands, And but more specifically his left hand, because he's a righty. Even his right hand had bandages. And he said that I'm cutting meat for forever, like I'm the most experienced butcher in this big butcher house. And the owner of the place sent me home halfway through the day. He was like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Like, what are you doing?" So we did. Now we have kind of a rule that if anyone works with knives or as a driver or something like that, is to take a day off work on the third day of the seminar. The fourth day of the seminar, meaning that the third day really puts your default mode network completely offline. So the fourth day is not a day to be, running heavy machinery, or playing around with knives. That fourth day, I once had my default mode network so off just from ice baths and breath work, and then meditation, and then I just get into a borrowed, brand new Highlander and totaled it like totaled the borrowed Highlander, and by the time I realized that I was gonna crash, it was only because the windshield was showering me with glass. The entire windshield was like showering me with glass, and I'm like, well, I guess I shouldn't have driven. Thank God everyone else was fine. And so I called my host, and I was like, I crashed the Toyota. He's like, "Which Toyota?" And I'm like, "The one you told me to take." He's like, "Well, which one did you take?" And I'm like, I explained to him the car. He's like, "No, that was our rental car. I wanted you to take the other one." So he's like, "You totaled a rental car that has my name on it." So, but amazingly, the insurance company covered it. Like, they explained, I lent him my car, and he took the wrong car. And they actually, can you imagine, covered it. But I have a feeling that this particular home has a very high-end policy, and they don't want to lose a client. So it's better just to pay for the Highlander and be done with it. But I learned also, stop driving when you're in meditation state. It's not the time to drive.
Don't drive at all because I'm very nice.
Yeah, Baruch, you should not be driving any heavy machinery. Yeah, except for maybe a forklift. Yeah. So let's go all the way back full circle. So I've got this workaholic, Donald Trump father, and and in every detail. I mean, it's like you name it, that was what was going on, and and so he really wanted me to learn his business because I remind him a lot of his father. In fact, my grandmother, when she was in the hospital before she went into a coma, I was the only one not allowed to visit. Because if she saw my face, she would start screaming for her husband, Sam, who died so young of all those heart attacks. She would see my face and start screaming, "Sam." And then they would be like, "Get him," like we should freak. And they would be like, "Get him out of here, get him out of here." And I couldn't be around my grandmother when in her later years because she would see her husband in my face. Now, my father was very close. He never got over the loss of his father, and I look exactly like him. So you can imagine my father's trying to put me in every position in his company, just to learn the business. But so he started me in sales. What did he do? He handed me big boxes of swimwear, like, surf shorts and stuff. And my whole high school surfs. So he's like, start by selling these to your classmates. So what I do, I brought the boxes into the school and I gave away every single bathing suit. And you don't understand, like my father had like Karl Marx for a son. I was like built to like to champion the cause of redistribution of wealth, and I mean that is in my core. When I heard that Judaism does not expect the government to take care of the poor, I was like, someone thought of it, like if someone figured it out, because there's always capitalism, communism. Communism, we take care of the poor. They didn't do a very good job, and capitalism is. The government takes care of the poor with our tax dollars from all the private equity that people earn. Not a very good job, especially in these days, thinking of all the homeless, in all the cities over there, and especially the wealthiest ones. Like LA is like one of the wealthiest cities on the planet. But, when you go there, it's like tents everywhere. And, I'm not going to continue describing what you see there. And you should know every homeless guy you see in Venice who's got like, he lives in this like little tent. He's got a little surfboard in there and a guitar, and he's blonde and blue eyes and stuff. Whenever I walk by them, when I'm visiting Venice, when I walk by them, I'm in LA a lot, see my parents. And when I walk by them, I always take a good look at the guy. I look him in the eyes. And he looks at me. And he gives us the nod because we're the same age, the same genre, and we know all the words to the same exact songs. And what I'm doing, though, is a very special and very deep meditation. And it's a meditation of gratitude. And the reason is because that's me. That's me. That guy's me. And had it not been for this absolute miracle of my father's bankruptcy, where for like just enough time to like hold your breath, my father lost all his money. And before Dustin Hoffman came and bought his house, in that tiny window of him losing his money, I graduate UCSB, You Can Study Buzz, to Santa Barbara. And the round the world trip my father promised me for that diploma, he could not pay for during this tiny little window. And I get a scholarship to come to Jerusalem. And here I am with everything I've done and everything I've built, and including, this beautiful giant family of healers. Because the reason, the first time I showed up with my 8 kids to LA for it was like a high school reunion party, whatever. And I showed up with all 8 kids to LA. So I was part of a radical environmentalist. You heard of radical environmentalists? It's like they like spike trees and stuff. It was called Earth First. I think it's an illegal organization. It was like environmental terrorism. And anyway, that was me. I'm telling you, these guys on the beach those are me. And that's exactly where I was at that point of my life. I had 100 of these down my back, and all I was doing was surfing and tripping, and atheist, progressive liberal, and protesting the U.S. involvement in the Gulf War. What was the U.S. doing for Israel at the time? They were trying to protect Israel from these Scud missiles that Saddam Hussein was sending from Iraq. And here I am, a Jew, atheist, progressive, liberal Jew, covered in ketchup on the campus square protesting the U.S. involvement in the Gulf War. And I mean, I'm as far away as can be. Really as far away as can be. It was fun for me watching the Free Palestine protests. I was like, that would have been me. I would have been organizing it at this point of my life.
I don't think any Jew would. I don't think most Jews would, because it's very directly anti-Jewish. Well, the Gulf War has to do with some country that's not that close to Israel.
Right. Maybe it'd have been different because this is directly anti-Jewish, the Free Palestine. Good point. Good distinction. Anyway, but who knows how far I would have gone? Because I thought at that time, marrying a Jew was racist, and I thought getting married at all was like old-fashioned. It was too conservative, and I also thought having children was irresponsible because of which is what my friends said when I came to LA. So we're at my parents' house, and we're chilling on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. And my kids, they met my kids, and they're like ducklings, one after the other in height order. It's like, and they're just checking this out, and they're also checking out the fact that I married, and just this super holy lady, but not a surfer chick like they ever met, and certainly not any surfer chick that they married. You understand? Like I was marrying with a completely different set of values here, completely set of values, and I want to marry the type of lady that would make sure my kids smelled Jewish in 2024. And at that point, it was 1994. But, and I wanted to marry, fertile Myrtle, and so anyway, while my kids are there, they had my mother had given them little packages of something to nosh on. And one of the packages that my kid finished blew out of their hand and went flying down the bluffs. So my kids are running along the bluffs. My parents live overlooking the ocean in LA, overlooking the whole Pacific there. So that my kids go flying down the bluffs into the bushes. So anyway, I'm chilling with my friends, and they're like, Glazer, you were more of an environmentalist than we were. I mean, you were radical about the environment. What's with these 8 kids? Lack of resources, overpopulation. Like, what is going on? And I said, when you're creating more of a problem, I understand why you might not want to have too many kids. But when you're creating the solution, you should have as many as possible. And at that point, it was so incredible, the timing. My kids come running with the plastic bag. And they say, look, Daddy, we found the bag. And I tell my kids' teachers every September when they start the new year, I go in to meet the teacher and I say, there's a lot of kids in there. I say, you see that little Hasidic boy over there? And they're like, yeah, that's your kid, right? And I said, yeah, that's my kid. And I said to him that I just want you to know that my wife and I are from a different background than you people. And there's only one reason we had all these kids, and that was to fix the world. So we don't have children, we have leaders in our home. And so I'm just asking you if you could just do a little extra focus with my child. All the kids are special, but everything you say will be repeated someday by this kid, because my kids are being trained to heal this planet, which is, it's so heavy. If I can quote Michael McDonald from the Doobie Brothers, he said, I've heard it said about the weight of the world's problems that it's enough to make the ball, meaning the earth, the ball, fall right through space. I've heard it said about the weight of the world's problems is enough to make the ball fall right through space. It ain't even worth it to live with all that's going on. Well, let me just go down and say that I'm glad to be here. Here with all the same pain and lies everybody knows. Well, some may think they're born to be king. Well, maybe that's true. Well, I think passing love along is all we were born to do. Let them build their kingdoms. Let them pass their laws for this world to heed. Whoa, you and I make life worth living. Right here in each other's arms. I'm here to love you. Anyway, that song is called I'm Here to Love You. I'm here to love you. Anyway, so I look at that homeless guy, and it's me. That's me. And it's a gratitude meditation. Okay, maybe a tinge of jealousy. Because I've got a lot on my plate, obviously, and he's living my original dream. And he's really me underneath it all. So I'm at a hotel with my family telling everybody who I am so that my back won't go out. And I just want to share how outraged I am about my background, my upbringing. I mean, my upbringing was blessed, but the American nightmare was so deep in me that even with all the trips and all the hippie and all the discovery of Judaism and all the Torah study and all the rabbis saving the world, that same voice from the Beverly Hills Glazers was eating me up. And I was a fake. Because deep down I really wanted to be somebody. Like Grandma said, when are you gonna be somebody? Or my father, I always thought you'd be somebody. And who I am is that homeless guy. I mean, I had to do a lot of work on myself. I had to get down to the bottom of all this. And Baruch Hashem, I don't give a damn if anyone knows who I am. My back feels great. And I did my work. These eyes have cried intense. When you want to get rid of one of those things, that event's sponsored by Kleenex tissue. There's not enough tissue in the world for what your eyes are going to cry. If you want to get rid of some of those old recordings inside, the real trauma inside. And this was the trauma of nobody, the trauma of my inner voice of being a nobody. That's the real trauma inside. That without money, you're nobody. What a trauma. What a horrible disservice. You're having kids to murder them. And by the way, all the ones where I grew up, the cousins and everyone who, they went with the parents' path. And I went directly against that path. From 11 years old, I was done. I dropped out of school at 11. That whole university thing was like a whole other story in itself. I dropped out of school at 11, but all the ones that went with it, who are now in their 50s and 60s, my peers. I mean, they look like Gold's Gym, but I see Ethiopians starving people. I see swollen skulls, distended bellies, toothpick arms, and flies all around them in their mansions they own around the world. And I just realized one of them, who's obviously has quite an allergic reaction to my path, I just realized that he's in a place where I should be offering to learn with him a half hour a week. And I'm going to ask you guys to remind me to send him a WhatsApp after. No connection to keeping Judaism. Just half hour of wisdom. Wisdom. Little time. Anyway, it's very sad. It's very, very sad. They've been badly ripped off. And especially those who have seen the spirit world know that this world doesn't even exist. And all you have is the spirit world. And so you either build your life there or you don't expect anything. Once you've seen the spirit world, you realize that everything is the spirit world. There is nothing but the spirit world. So you better invest now. All those investment people. Invest in the spirit world. That's the only thing there is. It's the only thing that will last forever. And think about your life here. I mean, how long's your life? Like, you guys want to live a long life? You want to live a long life? I knew all of you guys were going to nod except for him. All of you nodded, and he went. He's more like me. He wasn't so impressed with this place. I'm like him. So, I mean, obviously I want to marry off each kid and stuff, and clearly I should be dancing at my grandchildren's weddings, but other than little dance, But let's just say, I'll give everyone a blessing that you should live, let's go 120, okay? Now, how much time will have occurred from your birth till your 120th birthday when you die? Right. How much time, how many minutes, how many hours, how much time will have passed? Well, you should be answering me 120 years, right? No, zero. Zero time will have passed. This is a digital simulation we're living in. This doesn't exist. None of this exists. Ask a physicist. Ask a Kabbalist. This whole world, can God create something he's not? I mean, just think about that. It's just a simple riddle. Can God create something he's not? All right, okay, I'll add a word. Can an infinite God, infinite means unlimited by space and time, can an infinite God create something he's not?
Only if it's a mask.
Right. The second God creates something he's not, so then he's no longer infinite because he ends there and what he created begins there.
So he's playing an anxious avoidant game with himself?
Anxious avoidance game. Yeah, he's playing a lot of games with himself. I mean, just think about, like, anything you do towards God, isn't it not God doing towards God? You know, like, it's pretty crazy to think about it. I think the only thing you've really been given the choice of is running away. Because running towards him is just him running towards him. Because why would you run towards him? Well, because you've been given this fiber optic link that pulls you towards him. And so you're being like vacuumed back to where you're from every time you're doing the right stuff. And I think the only free will you have is to do the wrong stuff. Because, why not that?
Just to become aware of whether you did the right or wrong.
Meaning
That's also-
he'll send you to do the, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah. Right, even if, right, also everything's energy, but even if you're doing the wrong stuff, now you have the perspective of the right stuff. And like the Peterson, the only way to know good would be the opposite of evil. Like evil, you can figure it out.
I like that because that's the art, like the Michelangelo thing, right? You just tear away at what it's not, and then the sculpture appeared.
Right. With King David in the greatest sculpture ever. This is what I say this in the Possible You seminar, that I'm not here to like create something you're not. You're like Michelangelo when they asked him, how did you create this incredible greatest sculpture on earth? And I've seen it in Florence, Italy. Any of you guys saw it? Anyway, how did you create it? And he said, David was in there. I just removed what was in the way. And anyway, no time will have elapsed in your entire lifetime, zero time. So if you're investing only in ego, if you're investing only in this world, if your whole life was just how much stuff can you collect, So, you could literally have it all and nothing. You could have it all and nothing, and it's freaking scary. Scary, and so the last thing I want to share today is just that if you can strip yourself down to nothing and then learn from Michael Singer, the person who wrote the book,
Untethered Soul.
The Untethered Soul, which is a real masterpiece. And I actually taught that book. I have book clubs. By the way, if anyone wants to be in a book club, just go to Rabbi Yom Tov. Not Rabbi Yom Tov. Go to thepossibleyou.org and you can join a book club. And I have a membership, so it's much cheaper if you want to join the book club with a membership. Anyway, I taught that book, and my next book I'm teaching. That's apparently just some huge personal growth book. What is it called? Breaking Free? No, I forget what it's called. Anyway, but he has this other book called. I forget what it was called, but it was his book that was the experiment of his life. Whatever, it's Michael Singer's experiment of his life, which is how he became this billionaire guy, and just, so the way he did it was he stripped himself completely to nothing, to that homeless guy in the tent with the surfboard and the guitar and the long hair and the tan skin. But just nothing. And I did the same thing. This is how I got back to myself, is I stripped myself of everything. And then what happened was someone said, how would you like it was my brother, but my brother was watching me go down the progressive liberal deep end during the Gulf War and called Jerusalem and said, can you give my brother a free scholarship, please? Because he's going to be a total loss to the Jewish people. And they said yes. But when my brother called me and says, how would you like a free trip to Europe? Because I know you wanted to do the professional surfing tour. The surf tour in those days did France, Spain, Portugal. And I had been with the tour. I wasn't competing, but I was with the professional tour, France, Spain, Portugal. He's like, how would you like to join again, France, Spain, Portugal? I said, what's the catch? He says, you just got to go to Israel for 6 weeks. Free ticket. I said, sure, I'll take it. But the thing is, I took that. And the next thing you know, I'm like becoming an observant Jew. And then I just kept. Here's the thing. I'm not any of these things. I am that kid I'm that guy at the beach in Venice with Torah. I'm that homeless guy on the beach with a wife and 8 kids. I'm the guy on the beach who's marrying off those kids at these grand weddings. I'm the guy at the beach who runs a seminar called The Possible You. I never lost that guy. That is me. And it puts everything into perspective. It also makes my marriage make more sense, because it's pretty exhausting being married to me. I'm not exactly the 9-to-5 husband, She just never knows what's coming, and bless her for, just taking deep breaths around me. And we're married now 30 years, and it's just getting more and more amazing. It's getting a little easier, now that most of the kids are married at this point. So we can almost just party, But and thank God she loves to party, because I'm that guy, and I'm all the other things too, and I'm a Torah scholar, and I'm a teacher, but it's not me though. You understand? That's not who I am. And that's what the lesson I want to teach everyone here today is if you could just strip down to nothing, like the Torah says, what's the whole reward of what's the whole reward of keeping Torah? You'll get the rain in its times, and your produce grows, and you'll eat, and you'll be satisfied. Oh, thank you very much. How about I want a Ducati motorcycle, and I want an Italian sports car and a yacht. No, it's not offering that. That's not the reward. The reward is you'll be satisfied. Well, satisfaction sounds boring. No, it's not boring. Strip yourself back down to being someone who could just be that guy who's satisfied. Can you be a person satisfied? Rain or snow? In any weather, with anything, can you be just that guy or that gal who's just simple like that? Then, oh, you're good at something? Well, go make a killing, go do it. But don't be it. Don't be that guy. Be the original one. And as long as you stay true to that original one, your low back stays chill. Stay that guy. Don't mess with the original formula that Hashem created you to be. Go with that. Keep it simple. But hey, a podcast, if you're the man for the podcast, we'll build a podcast. And everyone will know you for that. I can't get out of people knowing me for this, that, and the other thing. If that's what you want to know, great. Well, I look in the mirror. There's a little tent, and there's a surfboard, and there's a guitar. Sand everywhere. Thank you. Anyway, please subscribe to the channel, Rabbi Yom Tov. And, I should probably get rid of my Rabbi Yom Tov Glazer channel because it might confuse people, but it's Rabbi Yom Tov. And what else I want to say to y'all is, I hit that little the bell, so you'll know I'm giving a class. And join us at thepossibleu.org as well. And this whole class actually took place at a place called Ushpiza, which is overlooking the Temple Mount here in the old city of Jerusalem. And you can also look into help and support this place as well. Where would they do that?
Oshpiza.com.
OSHPIZA.com, which is this organization here which hosts events for the Jewish people. Shalom, everyone.